Hello and welcome to India's World. Today we are discussing the developments in Bangladesh. Since early February, Bangladesh has seen an upsurge of protests led by its youngsters. These are people who were born after the Liberation War of 1971. Yet what they are demanding is strict action against war criminals who indulged in genocide, rape and arson during the 1971 Liberation War by collaborating with the Pakistani army. These protests have spread all over Bangladesh, but their focus seems to be an intersection in Dhaka called Shahbag. So it's also known as the Shahbag movement. What does this movement mean, and what does it mean for Bangladesh's politics and its future? To discuss this issue with me, I have a panel of distinguished guests with me. I have Ambassador Veena Sikri. She was India's High Commissioner to Bangladesh and is currently a Professor of International Studies at Jamia Millia Islamia. I have Mr. Bhaskar Roy. He's a strategic analyst with the South Asia Analysis Group and a former official of India's External Intelligence Agency, Research and Analysis Wing. And I have Mr. Hiranmoy Karlekar, eminent journalist and author, and my former boss.
Friend, not boss.
He has written many books, but he also wrote a very provocative book called Bangladesh, the Next Afghanistan. I'm sure after Shahbag movement he's had a change of heart.
No.
But we'll know by during this discussion whether that has happened.
Yes.
But let me begin with you, Ambassador Sikri. People have often compared this movement with the Arab Spring, and to my mind this comparison seems completely wrong, because the Arab Spring paved the way for religion to come into politics, and you have actually broadly secular but maybe undemocratic governments being replaced by moderate Islamic or Islamic governments. While in Bangladesh, this movement seems to be for keeping religion out of politics completely. It's a movement for secularism. Why is this? Why is this difference?
Well, I think to understand Shahbag Square, the movement, now it says a Gana Jagran Manch also, there's a group which has been formed, the square has been named Projonmo Chhattar, New Generation Roundabout. I think the most significant part of this is the involvement of the youth of Bangladesh in their own future. This is the third time, the third seminal movement in Bangladesh. The first one, I think, was 1952, which was the language movement. Yeah. Again, it was the youth of Dhaka University who were involved in that, and they lost their lives. The second time around was the 71 Bangladesh Liberation War. The Mukti Bahini were between 15 and 25 years of age for the greater part. So they were the youth who were involved in their future, who wanted to break away from Pakistan. And this is the third time. Now this time, I think, again, it is the young people, the bloggers, the modern communicators. Women are playing a very big role. They want control of their lives. And I think the best way to describe this movement is to accept that it's a political movement, but not a partisan movement. It's non-partisan. They don't want political involvement, but they're discussing issues of governance. And I think what you mentioned just now, this issue, the call for the ban on religion in politics, is very important, because this is so seminal for South Asia. It's not just Bangladesh. In fact, Bangladesh is one of the only of very few countries who actually had got this in their 1972 constitution. But then it was removed in the post-1975 changes brought in. So I think this is very important. The war crime trial certainly has been the trigger for it. But this whole factor of wanting the ban on religion in politics, and this being replied to by Jamaat with the communal elements that have come in.
And violence.
And the violence against the minorities, against the Hindus.
Yeah, but let me take this question to Mr. Bhaskar Roy. How is it that a country which is 90% Islamic, which is not against Islam, which is deeply religious, has given rise to a movement which is for asserting the secular linguistic identity of that country? This is contrary to what's happening internationally. Even on a western border, you see something else happening. So it's something unique, isn't it?
You think the West Pakistan and East Pakistan, which is Bangladesh now after 71, were two different entities altogether. Here it was liberal. If you go back, if you look at the history of the culture and of Bangladesh, that is where, and the language, that's where the separation came. The 52 movement was the language movement. In fact, it started somewhere around 1940, immediately almost after the nation was formed. And if you go back, the common people, they had so much in common among themselves, the ordinary people. So look at, you have the Baul and the Mafratis, singers, and both of them are same. Both, interpret society, religion, and God in the same same manner, and both said that you are putting temples and churches and mosques up, to sort of capture God and put him over there and think that the God is free. So similarly, you have in the pujas, they have the Hindus.
So you're saying it was a syncretic culture.
And the Muslims used to go to Satya Peer and that kind of a thing. And that spirit was killed after Sheikh Mujib was assassinated. And the whole system was hijacked. There was American involvement in that. Pakistani, of course, very well known. And Ziaur Rahman.
Yeah.
And Ziaur Rahman turned everything.
Yeah.
Jamaat was banned after 71.
He allowed it. Yeah, we'll just come to
Yeah.
that. Mr. Karlekar, who are these youngsters who are leading this movement? Is this a movement against cynical manipulation of politics by established political parties?
You see, you have to see it in two contexts. One is the universal context. Now, in terms of the evolution of institutional democracy, multi-party, it has been seen right from the middle of the 60s that the multi-party system has not always been able to reflect the views of people outside the party systems. The parties spoke for themselves rather than the whole mass of people who are not affiliated to parties. Till very recently, these people had no way of mobilizing, because the mainstream media will not hear of them, and they focused on parties. But now, with the new technology with information technology revolution, they can communicate with each other through Facebook, Twitter, etc. So their new channels of mobilization have opened up. So a lot of like-minded people are getting in touch with one another. You saw it in the Arab Spring. The quality
But that's where the similarity ends.
Ends, yes. The marriage between a desire to articulate and technology is brought you thus far. But again, there, as you rightly said, the comparison ends because of one man, Tagore. The whole one has to understand the influence of Tagore on Bengali culture. Tagore was a totally secular person. In fact, at the time, in early 20th century, he went out of his way to say, look, you Hindus, you have...
We'll come back to Tagore. I have to take a break just now. We'll continue with this discussion after the break. Don't go away. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV. Welcome back. We are discussing the mass movement in Bangladesh on war crimes trials. Mr. Karlekar, you were saying something about the influence of Tagore in forming Bangladeshi
That's a totally
national
secular
identity.
influence, and he had the first one demand affirmative action for the Muslims. Tagore, Chittaranjan Das and others stood for absolutely secular politics. So did A.K. Fazlul Haq, so did Mujibur Rahman and others. Now, this legacy continued. Even in Bangladesh, they have spoken about the language movement, about 71, but the cultural side of Pakistani repression which prevented the broadcast of Tagore songs on
Growth of
NUX
syncretic
Pakistan.
culture was stopped.
Yes, was stopped, and there was a backlash. There was a reassertion, subterranean reassertion of the Bengali culture, which led to 71, and which has led to a secular culture, which is now
It
manifest
hasn't quite
today.
yet led to secular culture, but let's see whether it develops.
The majority of Bangladesh, except 30%, I would say, who are secular. But 30%, there's a very significant pocket of Islamist fundamentalism. Let us not underestimate that.
Ambassador Sikri, let me come to you. Do the origins of the present movement lie in the failure of previous governments in dealing with war crimes?
That's a very important aspect because the younger generation wants closure to history. They have seen that, for example, when Sheikh Mujib was the leader, what was the interpretation of the 1971 war, what was the understanding of the issues involved. It was vital, very, very important. But the moment he passed away, he was tragically assassinated, history books were changed. The interpretation was changed. It was said that Zia declared independence as though he was, the whole creator of this whole war. So then again, you had Sheikh Hasina coming back after 91, after the end of military dictatorship, and they were alternating. Khalda Zia, Sheikh Hasina, Khalda Zia, now Sheikh Hasina again. So I think when Sheikh Hasina in the 2008 elections gave the call in her manifesto that I will do war crimes trial, I will have friendship with neighbors, people said now is the time to bring closure to history. We want to know that if people who were not in favor of the war and creation of Bangladesh, what are they doing with us today?
Okay. Let me ask you, Mr. Roy. In 1972, special tribunals were set up, but nobody knows how many people were tried. In 1973, a general amnesty was given to people, all those who are not involved in murder, rape and arson. And then the International Crimes Tribunal Act came in 2000. It came in 1973 itself.
Yeah.
But for 37 years, nothing happened.
Because the whole scenario changed. As Sheikh Mujib was also trying to sort of reach out to the Islamic countries, stabilizing Bangladesh, where we have a certain kind of question on his move, going to OIC, without taking
That's Organization of Islamic Countries.
yeah, without taking his own full cabinet into confidence, and a number of things. And after that, after his assassination, the whole thing suddenly changed. Now, Ziaur Rahman, who finally became the president, general president, and in 78, he brought the Jamaat back.
Yeah.
What was, there's a very big question I have raised quite frequently is, was he really a freedom fighter, or was he caught while in Bangladesh as an army major and being a very shrewd man, adopted
Switch
sides temporarily, because after that his actions are very different from a freedom fighter. He wanted to take over as a, declare of
But there's a bigger
independence.
question they will come to, which is whether the
Yeah.
BNP needs the Jamaat. But we'll come to that.
No, but what I'm
subsequently.
saying is, like Karlekar said, the Tagore issue, even Zia did the same thing. He tried to stop Tagore songs and anything which has anything slightly to do with Hinduism or Indian culture, like women wearing the bindi and things like that. Bindi is not really religious; it's a decorative thing. But anything.
So that's broadly society is moving in a different direction. But let me ask you, Mr. Karlekar, a separate question. Do you think a hasty trial of the kind that is being conducted now will actually bring closure to 1971?
Before that, I would answer two of your questions.
Yeah, but quickly.
Roughly 7,000 people were convicted between 72 and 30th of November 1973 amnesty. And the maximum penalty was 7 years, which created a lot of resentment. The resentment continued. Now, again, I'll come to before coming to the history trial, there has been a growing demand. And this demand has been kept for punishment, kept by Mukti Chetona Bikash Kendra, Center for Development of the Consciousness of Liberation, was set up in 1984. And the efforts of 4 or 5 people, Shahriar Kabir, Muntasir Mamun, Kaji Mukul, and these are the people who at great risk to their lives kept up a movement, and that led to the trial of Ghulam Azam, a public trial on 26th of March 1992 at Ramna Maidan in Dhaka, which was attended by 500,000 people despite severe government restrictions. And there, under the leadership of Ghulam Azam was given the death sentence. Now, there was a huge movement demanding punishment to these people coming up, and that has now exploded. And
But why the haste now?
because you see, there is a feeling that if the Jamaat and BNP come back, they will all be released. And finally, what happened between BNP government between 1991 and 96 was very different from the BNP Jamaat government from 2001, 2006, where you had absolute naked terrorism by fundamentalist elements like Bangla Bhai, like Jamaatul Mujahid in Bangladesh. Intellectuals targeted, murdered. Hasina was sought to be murdered on 21st of August, 2000.
63 out of 64.
I think
yes.
it's this question of haste
Yes.
that I think that somehow maybe it's been made out too much by people who don't want the trials to
Yes,
succeed.
yes.
They're calling it hasty. Actually, there are judges who've been appointed. They're calling for evidence. Witnesses are coming
due
on each
process
side.
is being followed.
So actually, I think that when it is assessed, it'll be found they're not really that hasty at all.
Okay, but what I wanted to ask you was that, do you think there's an attempt to divert the debate about the war crimes trials from war crimes to whether or not death penalty should be there or not.
I think today, for example,
No.
what people are feeling uncomfortable about is that there are 100,000 people standing there and chanting, deaths, deaths, deaths to the war crime people who've committed war crimes. So that is creating a feeling among a lot of people who have NGOs and pacifist people that why is this happening? But I think the question there is death penalty allowed in the national law or not? Since death penalty is allowed in the national law, this is the ultimate penalty.
Yeah.
But the question is whether you accept a death penalty or not is a separate issue.
Mr. Roy,
Anybody
you
who
wanted to
has
say something?
Yeah, I just want to say, take it from Sikri, that, this had to be brought to a closure.
Yeah.
This has been a festering wound which has kept the country in a turmoil, in a boil, in division, which prevented the country from going
Okay,
forward.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you after the break. I need to take a break just now. Don't go away. We'll continue this interesting discussion after the break. Welcome back. We are discussing the war crimes trials in Bangladesh and the students' movement there asking for death penalty to people who committed war crimes in 1971. Mr. Karlekar, before we went on the break, you wanted to say something.
Anybody who has seen what the Pakistanis did in 71, and I have seen it myself, I would not have believed that human beings could do such things if I had not seen. And Bangladesh cannot possibly forget this. What had happened was, Mujib was a terribly emotional people. All you need to do is to touch his feet and seek forgiveness, and it was given. And they made full use of it. But Zia identified with the communal forces. Now, what was the first thing he did when coming to power? He invited Jilani Khan. Jilani Khan was then the director of ISI. And slowly he built up the ISI in 77 as a clone, DGFI, Directorate General of Forces Intelligence, as a clone of the ISI.
Okay.
Now, on the one hand, alliance with Pakistan, promotion of Islamist forces. Jamaat was allowed to start in May 1979. Islamic Chhatra Shibir was called Sangha. It became Islamic Chhatra Shibir. And then the whole...
So it's a protest against all those things that have happened
and the deliberate
attempt to come to terms with their own history.
communalization of Bangladesh politics by first this man, Ziaur Rahman, then Ershad, who declared Islam to be the state religion of Bangladesh in 1988. And that was...
Today, Mr. Sikri, we have reached a stage where people are demanding a ban on Jamaat. Yes. Now, is it possible to ban the Jamaat now? It's not the same old Jamaat. It has roots in society. And if you ban it today, its cadre will go underground. You'll probably see more violence, more bombings.
I think that, first of all, it's not really a call for a ban on Jamaat per se. It's a ban on religion in politics. Now, I think it's interesting to note that even before the 2008 elections, when you had the 2-year army-backed caretaker rule, even then the Election Commission had brought in certain conditions that the constitution of a political party must be in line or synchronized with the national constitution. And they had determined that the constitution of Jamaat-e-Islami political party, is not in line with the constitution of Bangladesh. Okay. For example, you say that you accept only the Sharia law and so on and so forth. So they had asked for a revision of the Jamaat's constitution even then in 2008.
So it's an old demand.
It's a demand which is there on the cards, on the table, and while Jamaat-e-Islami had said
but
yes.
Is it possible to ban the Jamaat today?
As today, just their leaders are saying that even an executive decision is enough. The Human Rights Commission chief and some of the Election Commission chief, that an executive decision can be taken keeping in mind the rules of the Election Commission, the question of whether the constitution of the political party is in keeping with the national constitution, in the spirit of the national constitution, and so on.
Mr. Roy, suppose Jamaat cannot be banned, but Jamaat's business interests can be banned. Their newspapers, their television, which spews hate. The other enterprises, can they be curbed?
This is exactly what I've written about 3-4 weeks ago, that if you can't ban Jamaat, their sources of funding, their sources of activity, the foreign funding coming in, the Ibn Sina Trust and the Islamic Bank, which is started by the Saudis for the Jamaat, these can be checked, and which, if found doing anything illegal, can be banned. Okay. Jamaat itself, according to law, the discussion that is going on, even say yesterday or today in Dhaka, is there's a possibility of banning the Jamaat, because if they indulge, according to the constitution, a party or a group can be banned if they indulge in terrorism or anti-national.
Which they have been
well,
indulging in, and
indulging
the
in.
ideology remains the same.
Actually,
Mr. Karlekar, how will this movement, the Shahbag movement, impact on Bangladesh's future politics?
You see, it represents a trend which has been gathering momentum slowly. And as the process of modernization goes on, Bangladesh opens up further to the world. And the influence is ideological and amusement. Amusement is very important because culture is today shaped by movies. Culture is today shaped by music. Now, as long as movies and music, liberal movies and liberal music proliferate, Bangladesh will continue to march towards secularism. Jamaat is painting itself into a corner by its attitude towards
what
entertainment.
I had more in mind was, could this movement convert itself into a political force? And if it's a non-partisan force, what impact does it have? Or if it does not convert itself into anything, fritters away but changes people's mindset, then which party benefits, which loses?
No, basically it is any party which will benefit is the Army League. Army League's politics is very similar to their politics, though Army League's practice is not quite similar.
Well, they played footsie with Jamaat also.
Absolutely, 1994, Jamaat demanded the caretaker government, which they got. But mind you, Army League after 2001 and 2006, where Jamaat was involved in large-scale terrorist attacks on Army League cadre, will never be the same again. Yeah. What will happen? These people will most probably emerge as a cultural movement for secular politics, and which will have an immense influence on politics because politics cannot exist in a vacuum. It will create a climate which will secularize, further secularize Bangladesh politics and cleanse it.
And let me ask you this, the same question, but is it, Awami League will benefit. If you look at vote shares, you have 37% of Bangladesh National Party plus 8% of Jamaat makes majority. Otherwise, it's 47% of Awami League. So is the Awami League supporting this movement to tie down the BNP and the Jamaat rather than actually supporting the aspirations of the young?
You know, there are two factors to this. First of all, the vote share that you described, the vote share is roughly 33% of Awami League, 33% BNP, and out of the remaining 33%, you have about 8% to 10% maximum for Jamaat, a few for Jatiyo Party and so on. So there is about 25% swing vote, the 25% apolitical vote. Those are the people in Shahbag Square. Now, they want to retain their independence of voting. They want to vote on issues. This is not a personality-driven matter. This is an issue-driven matter. Now, the issues they are raising, the issues will, whether they'll vote for Awami League, on the issue of religion, definitely they will vote for Awami League. But there are other governance issues for which they are also looking. And I think the key issue is the caretaker government. Because BNP wants discussion with the government, or they're saying we will not participate.
We are running out of time. What I want all of you to do.
Army League's vote share never fell below 40%. Even in 2001, it received 40%.
Yeah, but okay, let's not get into that. What I wanted to tell me quickly, all three of you, quickly in one sentence each is, how should India view the movement and what should India do?
India should allow the movement to take its course. And I have said in my column today, two things need to be done. West Bengal's border needs to be watched to prevent fundamentalist Islamist organizations from helping the Jamaat.
Well, India should be looking at this thing, this movement positively, and it should be seen over there that India is a positive support, but at the same time must prevent in any way being dragged into the thing which the Jamaat and BNP are trying. But one more thing, India must ensure the security of Sheikh Hasina. Without her, and so many attempts have been made on her life, and these.
We should protect her. All right.
I think for us the most
everything is good to go.
Yeah.
I think for India the most important thing today is to redeem ourselves by implementing our promises. The land boundary agreement is very important. The Teesta Accord is very important. President Pranab Mukherjee's visit was very good, but we still have to implement those promises. If we don't, India will have the reputation of not delivering. And for the voter, if they think that this Awami League is going to give better relations with India, then they will not vote for Awami League. So I think this is a very important aspect. Economic cooperation is the second thing.
We are running out of time. I thank all of you for sharing your views. about the Shahbag movement and analyzing the situation in Bangladesh. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week with another issue. Till then, goodbye.